Everybody, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY family, DIY channel. I'm sorry. Got my words jumbled up there. I wanted to say thank you to my Calibrate Tools family, and I appreciate you guys for bringing us this far. You know, the channel couldn't have gotten to where it is without you, and I just want to say thank you, and I really appreciate anybody who has subscribed and watched the videos and bought the products and all of that good stuff, guys. I appreciate you. Like I said, without you, this wouldn't even be happening here. Okay. So guys, I talked about this in one of my first lives. I think it's one of my earliest, no, maybe one of my first videos, maybe. Okay. This topic, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. And, you get to uncover some really crazy reasons as to why they took the trades out of schools. And it's ridiculous, but it's all part of the master plan. And I figured I'd dive into it again this time at a later date. Okay, so let's talk about it. All right, guys. Why are the trades no longer taught in schools? Why is that? Okay, well, let's start from the beginning. All right, it says so back in the 50s and between the 50s and the 80s. Okay. Having wood shop, having mechanic shops in school, in high school, metalworking shops, welding and things like that. During that time, this was really really popular. Okay, these trades were pushed a lot in the schools. So not only were kids graduating with a diploma, they were also graduating with marketable skills. Okay, and I think some of the reasons for that, and excuse the noise, guys, I'm by a window, is, the manufacturing base of the U.S. was more intact back then, before they started outsourcing jobs, outsourcing, businesses to other countries, outsourcing manufacturers. They needed a workforce, right? They needed a young workforce that could scale, that could end up retiring and supporting that manufacturing base that we once had. Okay, but once they started shipping people off, guess what? They didn't need them anymore. So why promote the trades in high schools when you shipped all the jobs overseas, for cheap labor and stuff, or cheaper labor? And that was, I think, one of the reasons why you saw the decline of vocational knowledge or vocational education pushed in schools. Okay, so there was something called the Smith-Hughes Act of 1917, and that established the federal funding for vocational education, and that recognized that not every student would be going to college. Okay, so they knew that back then. Not every student would be going to college, so they enacted policies to make sure that there was enough money to fund these schools back then, so you won't have a surplus of students or kids walking around with no skills, right? Being a burden on the economy. So they made sure they put, into law, right? They signed into law something called the Smith-Hughes Act of 1917 to make sure that didn't happen. So you had to have these vocational education integrated into these high schools. So that would, help the broader economy. Once again, you don't want to have a bunch of people walking around without any skills if they didn't go to college. And but that didn't last, right? That didn't last. So I did a quick research on the topic, so I'll be reading a little bit about it, and you guys can just follow along. Okay, so it says by the 1970s, roughly 80% of high schools offered a robust vocational programs. Okay, students could choose between college prep and vocational tracks without stigma. Both paths were seen as valid routes to the middle class. So back then, whether you wanted to be a plumber, whether you wanted to be a carpenter, or you wanted to be a professor or a high school teacher or, engineer, it didn't matter what path you chose. They weren't, there wasn't a stigma on the trades, right? There wasn't a stigma on blue collar work, but obviously that changed over time. It says these programs were expensive to maintain. They required specialized equipment, materials, and instructors with industry experience. but they were considered essential infrastructure like science labs or gymnasiums. The investment made sense because graduates entered the workforce with real skills. A high school diploma with vocational training meant something tangible to employers. All right. So, as an employer back then, you were looking for a well rounded candidate to come work for you. Right. And wow, my how times have changed. Right. They, you know, if you're not well versed in today, right? If you're a kid and you're not well versed in AI or coding or something like that, they're gonna look at you like you had three eyes, right? But anyway, so back then, these were some of the essential skills kids came out of school with, and I mean, this to me that's just how it should be right now. And so let's look at what happened. What happened? Okay, so the decline of these programs. Okay, it said didn't happen overnight. It was the result of a few forces converging together: cultural, economic, and policy shifts. All right, that began in the 1980s and accelerated through the 1990s and 2000s. So once again, guys, it all comes back to policy, right? That's why they have lobbyists out there on Capitol Hill pushing for whatever they're pushing for, because and if you got enough money, you can make anything happen. Okay. So it says there was a fundamental change in how we viewed success. The College for All movement gained momentum driven by compelling data. College graduates earned significantly more than those with high school diplomas. The income gap widened throughout the 1980s and 1990s. Education reformers, policymakers, and parents concluded that college was the ticket to the middle class. So, being in the middle class back then was just, it was the goal, right? Oh, we're going to make it to the middle class here and live that white picket fence life. So, college, right? Going to college was, I guess, the ticket to get there. So obviously that put in people's minds that, hey, listen, I don't want my kid being a plumber. They're not going to make it to the middle class. They're not going to live that comfortable American life, cleaning toilets or whatever, or building houses. We need to put them in college. We need to give them a higher education. Okay. And it says this wasn't entirely wrong. The data supported it, but it led to the oversimplification of this issue. Okay, it says college graduates earn more, and then everyone should go to college. Right? That's an oversimplification. Vocational education became stigmatized as a track for students who couldn't make it academically. Right? And they put in quotes, couldn't make it. Right? The very term vocational began to carry negative connotations. So we see how propaganda, right, could be spread in any form or fashion to really stigmatize, whoever the perpetrator of the propaganda or whatever they want to stigmatize. Okay, and that's what happened with the trades. Okay, so it says educational policy formalized this shift. So not only was it stigmatized, but you made policies that basically cemented this type of thinking into society, where people basically looked at anything having to do with the trades as beneath them, right, or beneath going to college and stuff like that. So that happened in the span of a few years, right, at least a decade or so, to get this this idea that the trades are not not conducive to a life in the middle class, right? So that's where it all started back then. Okay, so they basically used law, policy. They put into writing and signed into law that this is how it's going to be. Okay, so let's see here. Then they have something called the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. I actually knew somebody that was instrumental. She was a teacher. She was instrumental in writing this No Child Left Behind Act. And it says that doubled down on this approach. Schools were judged primarily on reading and math test scores. Time and resources were redirected to tested subjects. Non-tested subjects included vocational education. Those subjects were squeezed out. Okay, so anything having to do with vocational education, it was just pretty much pushed to the wayside. Okay, so the focus was now on students getting ready for college, and then you have the whole SAT scores coming into the picture, and college acceptance rates, having to worry about that. So all these things just were put in place to basically steer kids, right, children or young adults towards going to college, pretty much. Okay. Let's see here. Economic pressures on schools intensified. Budget cuts hit education hard, starting in the 1990s. Okay, when forced to choose, administrators cut expensive programs that required specialized facilities and equipment. A wood shop costs far more to maintain than an additional English classroom. Auto mechanics programs require constantly updated equipment and vehicles. Welding programs need proper ventilation systems. These programs were expensive line items that didn't directly boost test scores or college administration rates or college admission rates. So you see right there that just the trades alone and how let's see when it came to the actual physical infrastructure of teaching these trades or these vocations, when that came into play, that was a strike against the trades. It was just too expensive, so they just started chopping them. And like I said, if you just got a classroom, an empty classroom with some chairs in it, compared to having to welders and ventilation systems and all these different types of tools, what do you think people are going to do, right? So that was a strike against the trades that where the budget cuts came into the picture, and then next thing you know, you didn't have them anymore. So it says finally liability concerns grew. Okay, schools became increasingly worried about student injuries in shop classes. Insurance costs rose. The risk changed. Was it worth maintaining these programs if an accident happened that could result in a lawsuit? Absolutely not, right? They looked at that and said, no, this is another strike against the trades. We don't want anybody getting hurt, and we got to get rid of it. We don't want that kind of liability over our heads. And boom. So you see, it was a trickle down effect, right? That eventually caused this shift to happen from vocations to being college bound. Okay, now let's see here. Okay, so what happened as a result of dismantling the trades or dismantling vocational education in the past? What happened? It says the most visible consequence is the skilled trade shortage we face today, and I talk about that constantly on this channel, right? There is a skilled trade shortage, and it's been around for a while, and everything I just talked about is a result of that, right? You start putting people out, or putting vocational classes in schools, and now you have a lot of kids walking around that didn't even go to college and they don't have a skill at all. So you have a shortage in the trades. It says, according to industry reports, there are hundreds of thousands of unfilled positions in construction, manufacturing, and skilled trades. Electricians, plumbers, welders, HVAC technicians, and machinists are in desperately short supply. The average age of skilled tradespeople is rising as older workers retire faster than young people enter these fields. Okay, so yeah, this is a real issue, and what are we going to do about it, guys? Well, I'm trying to do something about it myself, just by introducing people to tools on this channel, giving them a basic knowledge of how to use them, and so they can go out there and either do their own projects or go work for somebody, right? So I'm doing my little part here, right? It says at the same time, we've created an education system that pushes students towards college regardless of their interests or aptitudes, right? So it's like, okay, all right, we don't care what you like to do. You're going to go this route, right? It says about 70% of high school graduates now enroll in college, but only 60% of those who start college complete a degree within 6 years. That means millions of young people spend time and money on college without earning a credential. Even more troubling is the debt burden. Student loan debt, We all know about that. In America, exceeds $1.7 trillion. The average borrower owes around $30,000. Many students who don't complete college still carry this debt. They have neither the degree they sought nor the vocational skills they might have developed in high school. So, yeah, big mistake, guys. So, whoever started this whole thing where they're going to steer kids away from the vocations and steer them into college, obviously they weren't looking down the line to see what the consequences were. And if they knew what the consequences were, I would have to say that what that agenda was very nefarious. In other words, it was it was not it was, I don't want to say evil, right? Because you have a lot, and if I do use that word, it's because you have a lot of lower income children that vocations would have been a great opportunity for them to build wealth in their own community, right? Learning a skilled trade. And so that left them hanging, right? So, because they weren't afforded the opportunity to go to college, and they were also deprived the opportunity to learn a skill. And so now what do, right? So if they don't have a degree or whatever, and they don't have a skill, what are they out there doing? They're out there getting, whatever job they can get to survive, or maybe going into the military, or, unfortunately, some of them resort to other means of acquiring an income, which may not, it's not always the legal way. And so that feeds that prison to pipeline, system as well. So, who knows what the agenda was, but it seemed that it was engineered to me, right? A lot of this stuff was engineered by people who understood, who could look down the line, decades down the line, and see what this would produce in society. All right. So, yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm not going to go too long on this, guys. All right. I just want to give you guys a deeper look into why this happened. And, just have an idea that a lot of stuff was going on behind the scenes to cause this to happen here. All right, sis. We talked about the debt burden. It says many jobs that require vocational training offer solid middle-class incomes without requiring a 4-year degree or the associated debt. Okay. It says electricians, plumbers, and HVAC techs, they can earn $60,000 to $100,000 or more, especially once they start their own business. Welders, especially those with specialized certifications, command excellent wages. These are careers that offer stability. They cannot be outsourced, and they provide the satisfaction of tangible, skilled work. All right. We've also lost something less tangible, but equally important, and that's the opportunity for young people to discover their skills and their aptitudes and the interests that they didn't know they had. Right. I learned a few skills in my years on this planet, and I'll tell you right now, some of the stuff I didn't know I could do, but once you get your hands into it, once you get your hands on it, you discover things that, wow, I'm good at this, I can do this. And that's the great thing about the trades, is like once you get familiar with it, or whatever trade that is, you can really get hooked on some of this stuff, right? Okay, says many students who struggle in traditional academics might excel at working with their hands. Some students who would thrive as electricians or welders never discover that potential because they never had the chance to try these skills in school. Instead, they may struggle through college or drop out, feeling like failures, okay? When the real failure was a system that offered them only the narrow path to success. And like I said, that narrow path, I think, was designed to be narrow, to weed out a lot of people, a lot of these kids that wouldn't have any other opportunities, just to leave them hanging. So yeah, totally agree. Blame the system. It was designed that way. Okay. There's a class dimension to this as well. It says affluent communities often retain some form of vocational or technical education, rebranded as STEM, programs or maker spaces. Yeah. So you have these so-called affluent communities And let's be real here. These are the white communities. They retain a lot of these vocational programs in their schools, in their environments, right? They take, but everybody else doesn't get them, right? And they like they said, they rebrand them as STEM, right? That's, I think, science, technology, engineering, and math programs. Okay, it says, but lower income schools facing tighter budgets and more pressure to raise test scores were more likely to eliminate these programs entirely. The students who might benefit most from vocational education are the least likely to have access to it, like I just said. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, so do you guys think that was by design, or it just accidentally happened that these lower income schools doesn't have access to these vocational programs? No, absolutely by design. Absolutely. Okay. All right, let's dive deeper into it. It says, to understand why this shift occurred, we need to look at the deeper assumptions that drove it. Okay, it says there was a genuine belief that the economy was moving away from manufacturing, and like I was talking about before, and it was the economy was moving away from the manufacturing and trades, portion of it, toward a knowledge economy. So the decline of American manufacturing in the 1980s and 90s seemed to confirm this. Factories closed, jobs moved overseas. It appeared that the future belonged to college educated workers, not skilled tradespeople. Okay. It says this analysis was partially correct, but incomplete. Why was it incomplete, guys? It says, yes, some manufacturing jobs disappeared, but the skilled trades never went away. We still need electricians, plumbers, and carpenters and welders. In fact, we need them more than ever. Okay. As the infrastructure of any place, any country, any nation ages. In other words, infrastructure gets old, bridges get old, roads get old, and then that's just part of it, right? They need replacement, and guess who's got to do all that? Okay. It says there was also a Democratic push behind the College for All movement. Okay, Democrats, advocates genuinely wanted to expand opportunity to ensure that no student was tracked into a vocational program because of their background rather than their abilities. The old vocational education system had real problems with tracking students, often along racial and class lines, into programs that limited their futures. But in trying to correct one inequality, we created another. By eliminating vocational programs entirely, we removed the pathway that worked for many students. The solution should have been to reform vocational education to make it accessible and non-stigmatized, not to eliminate it. Yeah. What were these people thinking? They thought everybody was going to go to college? I don't think so, really. And I hate to say it, Democrats, and I'm not a Republican either, by the way, just because I'm talking about this. I hate to say it, but this was a really bad move for the Democrats, right? For them to push this type of thinking here that say, okay, we don't want kids that would be overlooked. We don't want them to lose the opportunity to go to institution of higher learning. We don't want them pushed into the trades just because we feel that that's where they should be. We want to give them equal opportunity. Come on now, everybody's not going to. I understand the thinking, and I get it, right? Maybe it was well intentioned, but look at what's going on now, right? You have a skilled trade shortage, and you have a lot of lower income kids that have no skills at all. All right. Signs of change. Okay, says the good news is that attitudes are shifting. There's a growing recognition that we overcorrected, that the College for All approach doesn't serve all students well, and that we desperately need skilled tradespeople. Okay, some school districts are rebuilding vocational programs. They're rebranded as career and technical education, or CTE. These modern programs are more sophisticated than the old shop classes. They have, the newer technology, and they incorporate actual business skills alongside the hands-on training. And I think that's great, because we need to not just push out workers, we need to push out business owners as well to keep to keep the skilled trades infrastructure going, right? You need to know how to run businesses. Um, Community colleges have become central to vocational education. They offer certificate programs as well as associate degrees in certain fields. Um, okay, states are creating apprenticeship programs that combine classroom learning with paid work experience. I think that's good as well. And they're following the models that work well in countries like Germany and Switzerland. These programs allow students to earn while they learn and graduate with both skills and work experience. Okay. All right. So it says companies facing worker shortages are partnering with schools to create pipelines of trained workers. They're providing equipment, instructors, and guaranteed job opportunities for graduates. There's also a cultural shift that's going on. Shows like Dirty Jobs and social media accounts showcasing skilled trades have helped reduce the stigma. Young people are discovering that trades offer good money, job security, and the satisfaction of skilled work. The narrative is slowly changing from college or failure to multiple pathways to success. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's all good. You know, there's a cultural shift going on. I think, yeah, they're very correct in saying that social media has a lot to do with it, because you have a lot of very skilled people on social media, these different platforms showing their skills. A lot of them are business owners. So yeah, that's the power of the internet and how that's helping to get that stigma off of, you know, blue collar work, skilled trades work, and stuff like that. So that's a great thing. Like I said, I would like to think I'm part of that as well, being on YouTube and doing what I do, to push the mantra, you know, multiple pathways to success there. All right. So why did we stop teaching trades in schools? It wasn't a single decision. Okay, like I said, it was a multiple things happened, right? From policy shifts, okay, all the way down to, you know, economic issues having to do with you know, the how much it costs just to run a vocational program in a school compared to just teaching, you know, putting a bunch of chairs in the classroom and teaching them how to write an essay. Which one's more expensive, right? So it came down to money at one point, and then it came down to I think in the even further, further deeper into this is the class and racial aspects of it as well, because people have agendas along those lines as well, those political lines. So all that stuff had to do with why the trades or vocations aren't taught in schools like they used to be. All right. Manufacturing as well, being outsourced, that was a big thing as well, right? All right. So let's see. It says the consequences are clear: a shortage of skilled workers, millions of students with no degree, and young people who never discover their potential for skilled trades work. It says the path forward requires us to recognize that there are multiple forms of intelligence and multiple pathways to a good life. We need to reinvest in vocational education, but do it better than before. Programs that are rigorous, prestigious, right? Take the stigma out of it, make it just as prestigious as being an engineer or a NASA astronaut or whatever, and open to all students based on interests rather than tracking. Programs that combine traditional trades with modern technology and business skills. Programs that give students real options, not a single path. All right. Anyway, guys, that's it. That's the rundown on why you don't see a lot of vocational programs in schools today. Hope you guys got something from that. Hey, Chantel, how you doing? Shalom to you. Chantel says, I think the trades are no longer taught in the schools because it's part of the breakdown of the Black community and family. Chantel, you're absolutely correct. You know, I think that, like I was saying, it was, I think it was all designed for that very reason. You have to understand the reason we don't have universal health care in this country, the reason we don't have free education in this country like they do in other countries, is racism at the end of the day, right? They didn't want the black community, okay, to be privy to all the privileges that they had. They would rather suffer themselves, as we see as what's happening today, than have the black community be on par with them when it came to access to resources and access to capital and access to healthcare, and all this stuff. They would rather not have these things and suffer themselves than for African Americans or the black community to have it, which is which tells you right there. I mean, that's just imagine that. I mean, you talk about America being the land of the free and home of the brave, which is an absolute farce. When you really look, you look under the rug and see what's going on. But yeah, absolutely, Chantel. They didn't want the African American community to be skilled, even though they built this country, right? They didn't want that, right? So yeah, I think everything is predicated on that. What Chantel said right there. When you see these cuts, and I mean, give me a break. You have people suppressing votes in the black community, right? They don't want them to vote. What makes you think they wouldn't suppress access to resources or education? In this case, skilled trades or vocational education. Yeah, absolutely, right. And I think when you look at these things, you always have to think of the black community, okay? Because for some reason we have something to do with everything in this country having going wrong, right? Or lack of resources, and America was based on that. It was built on that. It was built on racism and keeping a certain group down on the bottom. And even what I talked about on this live tonight, I think absolutely they didn't want a skilled workforce. I think before segregation, when we were forced to build our own communities, right? I think it was better back then. And think what you want to think about it, but we were more self-sufficient. I guarantee you there were more skilled tradespeople back during African Americans, black folk, before integration. I guarantee you that, because we had to build our own communities, and not only build our own communities but run our own communities, and we did it very well until they came in and destroyed these communities, which is another testament to how evil this system is. So yeah, that's I mean, you can't really understand everything I just talked about on this live without understanding what Chantel said. Okay, the black community is really at the root of every move they make when it comes to policy changes, whether it's economic or whatever. They always factor us in. They said, okay, if they're getting this, no, we can't have that. We can't have them get this. So we gotta move some things around. And yeah, some of us are gonna suffer too, but we definitely don't want them to have it. So, we got to take one for the team in order for this system to run the way we want it to run. Chantel said, yes, we were far better as a people when we were segregated. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, so I don't know what Martin Luther King was fighting for, to be honest with you. I mean, I get it. He was appealing to the better part of man's nature, but I don't think it really worked out, to be honest. The way he would have loved it to work out. Because if you look at every other culture in this country, whether it's the Asian culture, Hispanic culture, Indian culture, they all have their insulated communities, right? Where they have their it's like their own little nations where they support each other. They spend money amongst each other. They circulate their the currency in their own communities, and they support each other, right? When it comes to the African American community, our dollar only circulates maybe 30 minutes and it's gone out of the community. So yeah, these are some very real issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about. They're scared to talk about it or whatever. But yeah, they factor us in. They factor the African American community in, or whether you want to call yourself indigenous, whatever, black community. They factor us in every move they make. Every move they make when it comes to economic policy, resources, how to allocate resources, they factor us in. You know, from healthcare to work, to jobs, to whatever else. They want to make sure that we don't get we don't get what they get. So anyway, went off on a tangent there, but I think it's important to note. Yeah. All right, Chantel, appreciate you on that one. Anyway, guys, that's it for tonight. Hope you got some out of it. Yeah, let's start to train up our young people again, especially in the African American community, in the trades. Okay, teach them vocation. I'm doing my part with my channel, teaching people how to use tools and stuff like that. And we need to, you can't have a functioning economy, right? You can't have a white collar economy without a blue collar economy. You just can't, because skilled tradespeople are responsible for the infrastructure that everything's built on, even this internet, right? That we're talking on right now. If you didn't have somebody to build the cell towers or run the fiber optic cables or whatever they need to run, I wouldn't be able to talk to you on the internet. It wouldn't be any internet. So at the end of the day, the trades, I think, are more important than anything else, to be honest with you. All right. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. All right. Have a good one.